The black woman positioned the mining foreman's legs over her shoulders as the towering cowboy sheriff watched from the crowd. "Deeper. I need to go deeper," she declared, examining the mangled wound while hostile whispers circulated about her unnatural healing methods. The townspeople viewed her as a dangerous curiosity, useful when death knocked, but ultimately destined for exile or worse. The sheriff, a former deserter hiding his own shameful illiteracy, found himself inexplicably drawn to her quiet confidence and mysterious knowledge that surpassed their established doctor's abilities. But someone from her past had followed her to this frontier town, determined to destroy what remained of her medical career. Their secret conspiracy threatened not just her survival, but the sheriff's newfound hope for redemption through learning. Would their unlikely alliance survive the revelation of who she really was, or would the truth destroy them both? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The dust had barely settled from the mine shaft collapse when Belle Freeman found herself kneeling in Millfield Creek's main street. The injured foreman lay unconscious before her, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood seeped through torn fabric while townspeople formed a wary circle around the scene. Dr. Harrison pushed through the crowd, his black medical bag clutched tightly. He knelt beside the man and shook his head grimly. The bone had snapped clean through. Infection would likely set in within hours. "He'll lose the leg," Harrison announced to the gathered faces. "Might lose his life." Belle stepped forward from the crowd's edge. Whispers followed her movement like shadows. She had arrived in town 3 weeks ago with nothing but a worn traveling bag and an unsettling knowledge of healing that made people uncomfortable. "May I examine him?" Belle's voice carried clearly across the street. Harrison looked up with barely concealed irritation. "This requires proper medical training, not folk remedies." Belle ignored his dismissal and moved closer. She carefully positioned the injured man's legs over her shoulders, angling for better access to the wound. Her fingers traced the injury with practiced precision. "Deeper. I need to go deeper," she said, referring to her examination of the damaged tissue beneath the surface. The crowd murmured uneasily. Mrs. Henderson crossed herself and stepped back. Old Pete spat into the dirt and muttered something about unnatural practices. Sheriff Iron McCoy watched from his position near the general store. The tall man shifted his weight, hand resting unconsciously on his gun belt. He had been ordered to keep an eye on the mysterious healer ever since her arrival. Belle worked with steady hands, cleaning the wound with techniques that seemed oddly methodical for someone supposedly trained in backwoods medicine. She wrapped the leg with strips torn from her own skirt, creating a splint that held the bone in perfect alignment. The foreman's breathing steadied, his color improved within minutes. Harrison stood abruptly, brushing dust from his knees. "Primitive superstition," he declared loud enough for everyone to hear. "The man needs proper surgical attention." But the crowd had seen the improvement with their own eyes. The foreman who had been dying was now breathing normally. His leg sat straight instead of twisted. Belle rose without acknowledging Harrison's comment. She gathered her makeshift supplies and walked toward the edge of town where she had built a small cabin. The whispers followed her like hungry wolves. Iron found himself walking in the same direction. Something about the woman's confident movements troubled him. Folk healers didn't work with such precision. They relied on herbs and prayer, not surgical technique. Over the following days, word spread about Belle's success. The foreman not only kept his leg but walked again within 2 weeks. People began arriving at her cabin with various ailments. A child with a fever that broke overnight. An old man with an infected wound that healed cleanly. A pregnant woman whose difficult labor ended safely. Dr. Harrison's complaints grew louder with each success. He attended town council meetings and spoke of unregulated medical practice. He documented every case Belle treated, building what he called evidence of dangerous quackery. Iron received his orders after one such meeting. Monitor the healer closely, document her methods, prepare a case for removal if necessary. The sheriff struggled with these instructions. He had watched Belle work and seen results that surpassed anything Dr. Harrison achieved. But orders were orders, and his position depended on following them. Belle seemed aware of the growing scrutiny. she kept to herself, speaking only when necessary. She lived simply in her cabin, accepting payment in food or small goods, rather than demanding cash like the town doctor. Iron noticed something else during his surveillance. Bell carried books, worn volumes that she handled carefully. Sometimes he glimpsed her reading by lamplight through her cabin window. The pages looked like medical texts, though he couldn't be certain. His own relationship with written words remained complicated. Iron had learned to recognize wanted posters and basic signs, but longer documents posed problems. He relied on his deputy to read official correspondence aloud, always claiming his eyes were tired or the light was poor. The pretense grew more difficult as territorial authorities began sending longer reports. Questions about unusual medical activity in Millfield Creek, inquiries about unlicensed practitioners. Iron found himself inventing excuses to avoid reading documents in public. Anonymous threats began appearing around town, notes warning Bell to leave before something unfortunate happened. Iron investigated but found no clear suspects. The handwriting looked educated, ruling out most of the miners and ranch hands. Dr. Harrison's documentation efforts intensified. He began following Bell to her appointments, questioning her methods publicly. He demanded explanations for techniques he claimed to have never seen before. Bell endured the harassment with quiet dignity. She continued treating patients who sought her help while avoiding direct confrontation with the established doctor. The tension reached a breaking point when Silas Blackwood, owner of the largest mine in the territory, scheduled a private meeting with Harrison. Iron watched the two men enter the doctor's office late one evening. They spoke in hushed tones for over an hour. The next morning brought news that would change everything. A major explosion had occurred at Blackwood's main shaft. Dozens of miners were trapped. The injuries would be severe, and Dr. Harrison would need all the help he could get. Iron rode hard toward Bell's cabin as smoke billowed from the mining district. The real test was about to begin, and something told him that Belle Freeman was far more than she appeared to be. The explosion at Blackwood's mine shattered the morning calm like thunder. Smoke poured from the main shaft while screams echoed across the valley. Iron rode toward Bell's cabin as fast as his horse could carry him. He found her already preparing supplies, having heard the distant blast. Her medical bag sat packed beside several clean blankets and bottles of what looked like sterilized water. "Dr. Harrison will need help," Iron said breathlessly. Bell nodded and climbed onto the spare horse he had brought. They rode toward the mining camp where chaos ruled the scene. Injured men lay scattered across the ground near the shaft entrance. Some clutched broken limbs while others struggled to breathe through smoke-damaged lungs. The more seriously wounded had been carried to a makeshift medical station outside the mine office. Dr. Harrison moved between patients with obvious panic in his movements. His hands shook as he attempted to assess the severity of each case. 3 men appeared to be dying, and several others faced permanent disability without immediate intervention. Bell dismounted and approached the medical area. Harrison looked up with desperate relief that quickly turned to suspicion. "I suppose you think your folk remedies can help here," he said sharply. "I can assist with the wounded," Bell replied calmly. Iron watched Harrison's internal struggle. Pride fought against necessity as he surveyed the overwhelming number of casualties. Finally, desperation won. "Fine. Handle the minor injuries while I work on the serious cases." Bell moved toward a man with severe burns on his arms and chest. Harrison had classified the case as minor, but Bell's examination revealed dangerous signs of respiratory distress. The miner had inhaled superheated air along with coal dust. She positioned him carefully to open his airways, then began a treatment that looked nothing like folk medicine. Her movements were precise and methodical, following what appeared to be established medical protocols. The burned miner's breathing improved within minutes. His color changed from gray to pink as oxygen reached his blood more efficiently. Iron moved closer to observe. Bell's technique resembled surgery more than traditional healing. She worked with instruments that seemed far too sophisticated for a traveling healer to possess. A young miner approached with a compound fracture of his forearm. Bone protruded through torn skin while blood flowed steadily from the wound. Harrison had been too overwhelmed to treat the injury properly. Bell examined the fracture with careful attention to detail. She positioned the man's arm to reduce pressure on the break, then began cleaning the wound with solutions that smelled like hospital disinfectant. "Where did you learn to do that?" Iron asked quietly. Bell continued working without looking up. "I studied under learned men in the East." Her answer seemed deliberately vague, but her actions spoke clearly. This was not folk knowledge passed down through generations. This was formal medical training applied with expert skill. The compound fracture required delicate manipulation to align the bone properly. Bell worked with steady hands, showing no hesitation despite the complexity of the procedure. She set the break perfectly and wrapped it with materials that would prevent infection. Iron had seen battlefield surgeons during the war. Bell's technique surpassed most of them. Dr. Harrison struggled with a chest injury across the medical area. The patient was losing consciousness while Harrison fumbled with his instruments. Bell glanced over and moved to assist, without being asked. "The lung has collapsed," she said after a brief examination. Harrison stared at her in confusion. "How can you possibly know that?" Bell ignored his question and began a procedure that looked like something from a sophisticated medical facility. She worked with tools from her own bag, instruments that gleamed like precision surgical equipment. The collapsed lung re-inflated under her careful treatment. The patient's breathing stabilized as color returned to his face. Harrison watched in stunned silence. 3 more serious cases required Bell's intervention over the following hours. Each time she demonstrated knowledge that went far beyond anything a folk healer could possess. She understood anatomy, surgical procedures, and medical theory at a level that impressed even Iron's untrained eye. By evening, every injured miner had been successfully treated. Several men who might have died were sitting up and talking. Others who faced permanent disability would recover completely. Dr. Harrison attempted to take credit for the successful treatments when mine supervisors arrived to assess the situation. He described Bell's contributions as simple assistance, while claiming responsibility for all major medical decisions. Bell said nothing to contradict his claims, but Iron had witnessed the truth. She had saved multiple lives using skills that required years of formal education to develop. After the supervisors departed, Iron approached Bell as she cleaned her instruments. The tools were clearly surgical quality, not folk medicine supplies. "Those don't look like anything a traveling healer would carry," he observed. Bell paused in her cleaning. For a moment, her careful composure seemed to waver. "I collect medical instruments," she said carefully. "They help me serve people better." Iron sensed there was much more to the story, but he didn't press the issue. Whatever Bell's background, she had proven her worth beyond question. Dr. Harrison packed his supplies with obvious frustration. The day had exposed his limitations while highlighting Bell's superior abilities. His resentment was plain to see. As they prepared to leave the mining camp, Iron noticed Bell carrying a worn book that had fallen from her bag. The cover bore the title, Advanced Surgical Procedures, and looked like a medical school textbook. Folk healers didn't study advanced surgery. They relied on herbs, prayer, and traditional remedies passed down through families. Belle Freeman was hiding something significant about her background, and Iron was beginning to suspect it would change everything about their small frontier town. 3 days after the mine disaster, Iron found himself standing outside Belle's cabin as sunset painted the sky orange. The events at the mining camp had left him with questions that demanded answers. He knocked on the wooden door, hat in hand. Belle opened it with cautious surprise. "Sheriff McCoy, is there trouble?" "I need to speak with you about what happened at the mine." Belle stepped aside to let him enter. Her cabin was sparse but organized. Medical supplies lined one wall while books sat stacked on a small table. Iron noticed the titles were all medical texts, far more advanced than anything a folk healer would need. "You saved lives that Dr. Harrison couldn't," Iron said directly. "That wasn't folk medicine." Belle moved to the window, looking out at the darkening landscape. Her silence stretched between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross first. Iron made his decision. "I have something to admit. I can't read properly." The confession hung in the air. Belle turned to face him with genuine surprise. "I learned enough letters to get by as sheriff, but official documents are difficult. I pretend to understand them, then have my deputy read them later." Belle's expression softened. Why are you telling me this? Because I think we both have secrets. Mine makes me feel like a fraud every day. Belle studied his face for a long moment. Iron saw her internal struggle, the same battle between truth and safety that he faced daily. If I tell you something, you could lose your position as sheriff, she said quietly. If I don't learn the truth, I might lose it anyway. Belle walked to her bookshelf and pulled out a worn leather portfolio. She opened it carefully and removed a document with official seals. Iron couldn't read the full text, but he recognized the formal layout of certificates and diplomas. This looked important. My name is Dr. Isabel Freeman, Belle said, her voice steady but quiet. I graduated from Philadelphia Medical College 3 years ago. Iron stared at the document, then at Belle. The implications hit him like a physical blow. You're a real doctor. I practiced in Philadelphia for 6 months before they discovered my background. A medical degree doesn't protect someone like me from the realities of society. Belle sat down heavily, as if the weight of her secret had been holding her upright through sheer force. I came west, hoping frontier towns might be more accepting of skill over prejudice. But no mining camp or cattle town will hire a doctor who looks like me, regardless of qualifications. Iron processed this information slowly. So you pretend to be a folk healer. It lets me practice medicine while avoiding the controversy that would arise from claiming my real credentials. Belle showed him more documents from her portfolio. Detailed case studies, surgical notes, letters of recommendation from professors. The evidence was overwhelming. You're probably the most qualified doctor in the territory, Iron said, and I have to hide it to survive. The parallel to his own situation struck Iron forcefully, both of them diminishing themselves to fit into roles society would accept. I could teach you to read, Belle offered. Properly, not just enough to get by. Iron looked at the medical books surrounding them. And maybe you could teach me enough to understand what you really do. Belle smiled for the first time since he had known her. We could help each other. Over the following weeks, they met in the evenings at Belle's cabin. She used her medical texts to teach Iron letters and words, while explaining the science behind her treatments. Iron discovered that Belle's knowledge extended far beyond what he had witnessed. She understood anatomy, chemistry, surgical procedures, and diagnostic techniques that put Dr. Harrison's abilities to shame. Why Philadelphia? Iron asked one evening as they worked through a chapter on wound treatment. Belle's expression grew distant. They had a program that accepted students based on ability rather than background. It was the only chance I had. What happened when they found out? Someone reported my true identity to the board. They said my presence violated the moral standards of the institution. Iron could hear the pain in her voice despite her matter-of-fact delivery. Who reported you? A professor who had been helping me navigate the program. I thought he was an ally. Belle's hands clenched slightly as she spoke. The betrayal had cut deep. He claimed later that he was protecting the school's reputation, said my success would bring unwanted attention. Iron understood betrayal intimately. His own past was filled with broken trust and abandoned loyalties. You came here to start over. I came here to practice medicine in peace, even if I had to pretend to be something lesser. Their study sessions continued through the autumn. Iron's reading improved dramatically while his understanding of Belle's true abilities deepened. She was not just a qualified doctor, but an exceptional one. Belle began trusting him with more details about her treatments. She explained diagnostic procedures, discussed complex cases, and shared the scientific reasoning behind her methods. Dr. Harrison doesn't know half of what you do, Iron observed after learning about advanced surgical techniques. Most frontier doctors rely on basic training and experience. Formal medical education is rare out here. Iron realized that Belle's presence in Millfield Creek represented an opportunity for unprecedented medical care, if only the truth could be revealed safely. But revealing Belle's credentials would bring scrutiny from territorial authorities. Questions about her background, her training, and her right to practice medicine would follow. As winter approached, Iron found himself torn between protecting Belle's secret and recognizing the injustice of her situation. She deserved to practice openly under her real qualifications. The decision about whether to reveal the truth would soon be taken out of their hands. Winter brought new challenges to Millfield Creek along with unexpected visitors. Dr. Harrison received a package from Philadelphia that made him smile for the first time in months. Inside were official documents and correspondence that would change everything. Belle noticed Harrison's improved mood during their encounters in town. He carried himself with renewed confidence, speaking louder about proper medical standards and the dangers of unregulated practice. Iron observed the change, too. Harrison had been defeated after the mine disaster, but now he moved with purpose. Something had shifted in the doctor's favor. The town council called a special meeting to address medical concerns in the community. Harrison had petitioned for official recognition of his authority and the establishment of regulations governing medical practice. "We need standards," Harrison declared to the assembled councilmen. "Anyone can claim healing abilities, but proper medicine requires proper training." Silas Blackwood supported Harrison's proposal enthusiastically. The mine owner had been quiet since the disaster, but now he spoke passionately about protecting the community from unqualified practitioners. Iron attended the meeting as sheriff, watching carefully as Harrison presented his case. The doctor seemed unusually well prepared, with specific examples and legal precedents that suggested extensive research. "I propose a public demonstration," Harrison announced. "Let the community witness the difference between proper medical training and folk remedies." The council agreed to the demonstration, scheduled for the following Saturday. Belle would be required to participate or face restrictions on her practice. Iron visited Belle that evening to warn her about the upcoming challenge. He found her reading by lamplight, studying advanced surgical procedures as she often did. "They're setting a trap," Iron said without preamble. Belle looked up from her book. "I suspected this was coming." Harrison seems confident about something. More confident than the situation warrants. Belle closed her book slowly. He's planning something beyond a simple demonstration. Over the next few days, Iron investigated Harrison's recent activities. He discovered regular correspondence with Philadelphia and meetings with Silas Blackwood that lasted for hours. The sheriff's improved reading skills, thanks to Belle's teaching, allowed him to examine some of Harrison's official documents. What he found made his blood run cold. Harrison had been conducting a detailed investigation into Belle's background. Letters from Philadelphia contained information about her medical school experience and the circumstances of her departure. One letter, signed by a Dr. Jonathan Hartwell, provided specific details about Belle's time at the medical college. The writer seemed intimately familiar with her case. Iron read the correspondence carefully, his new literacy skills revealing the full scope of the conspiracy. Harrison wasn't just opposing Belle's practice locally. He was systematically destroying her ability to practice medicine anywhere. The most damaging letter revealed Harrison's true identity. He was Dr. Jonathan Hartwell, Belle's former professor who had orchestrated her expulsion from medical school. Iron sat in his office, staring at the evidence. Harrison had followed Belle across the country to finish what he started in Philadelphia. This wasn't about medical standards or community safety. This was personal revenge. Silas Blackwood's involvement made more sense now. The mine owner was Harrison's brother-in-law, providing financial support for the elaborate scheme to discredit Belle permanently. Iron confronted the depth of the conspiracy with growing anger. Two men had dedicated significant resources to destroying one woman's medical career simply because her success threatened their worldview. The public demonstration was scheduled for Saturday morning in the town square. Harrison had arranged for territorial medical authorities to attend as witnesses to Belle's supposed incompetence. Belle prepared for the challenge with calm determination. She gathered her instruments and medical supplies, knowing that her performance would determine her future in Millfield Creek. "They want you to fail publicly," Iron warned her. "I know, but I won't give them that satisfaction." Saturday arrived with clear skies and a gathering crowd. Harrison had set up an elaborate medical station with official equipment and territorial observers. Belle's setup looked modest by comparison. The demonstration began with Harrison treating a patient with a dislocated shoulder. His technique was competent but basic, following standard procedures without innovation or particular skill. Belle approached her patient, a miner with a complex hand injury that had been bothering him for weeks. Multiple fingers showed signs of poorly healed fractures and restricted movement. She examined the hand with careful attention to detail, explaining her observations to the watching crowd. Her diagnostic process was thorough and systematic, revealing damage that previous treatments had missed. Bell began working on the injured hand with precision that impressed even the territorial observers. She corrected old fractures, restored proper joint alignment, and improved circulation to damaged tissues. The crowd watched in fascination as Bell's patient regained full use of his hand for the first time in months. Her technique surpassed anything Harrison had demonstrated. Harrison's frustration became visible as Bell continued her work. This wasn't going according to his plan. He had expected her to fail under pressure, but instead she was showcasing abilities that exceeded his own. The territorial observers took detailed notes on Bell's methods. They seemed genuinely impressed by her skill level and the sophisticated nature of her treatments. As the demonstration concluded, Harrison made his move. He stood before the crowd and made a shocking announcement. "This woman is not who she claims to be. I have evidence that she's a fraud who was expelled from medical school for dishonest conduct." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Bell stood frozen as Harrison produced his correspondence from Philadelphia. Iron realized the moment of truth had arrived. The conspiracy was finally revealing itself, but Bell's reputation hung in the balance. Harrison's accusation rippled through the crowd like wildfire. The territorial observers leaned forward with sudden interest, while townspeople whispered among themselves. Bell stood motionless as Harrison waved his Philadelphia correspondence triumphantly. "This woman was expelled from medical school for fraudulent behavior," Harrison declared. "She has no right to practice medicine anywhere in this territory." Bell's composure never wavered. She looked directly at Harrison with steady eyes. "You seem remarkably well informed about my background, Dr. Hartwell." The use of his real name stopped Harrison cold. His face went pale as he realized his cover had been blown. Iron stepped forward from the crowd, holding documents of his own. His months of learning to read had finally paid off in full. "Speaking of fraudulent behavior," Iron said loudly, "let's discuss Dr. Jonathan Hartwell's real reasons for being in Millfield Creek." Harrison backed away as Iron approached. The sheriff's newfound confidence in reading had given him powerful weapons. According to these letters, Dr. Hartwell orchestrated Bell's expulsion from medical school 3 years ago. He's been tracking her movements ever since. Iron held up the correspondence for the territorial observers to examine. His voice carried clearly across the town square. "This isn't about medical standards. This is personal revenge funded by Silas Blackwood, who happens to be Dr. Hartwell's brother-in-law." The crowd's mood shifted dramatically. What had seemed like legitimate medical oversight now appeared to be a calculated conspiracy. Bell seized the moment to speak her truth. She reached into her medical bag and removed her leather portfolio. "My name is Dr. Isabel Freeman. I graduated from Philadelphia Medical College with highest honors." She presented her diploma and medical license to the territorial observers. The documents were genuine and properly certified. "I was expelled not for academic failure or medical incompetence, but because someone reported my background to the school board." Bell's voice grew stronger as she continued. "That someone was my own professor, who claimed my presence violated the institution's moral standards." The territorial observers examined Bell's credentials carefully. Her qualifications were impeccable, far exceeding what most frontier doctors possessed. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward from the crowd. "Dr. Freeman saved my husband's life when he had that fever." Dr. Harrison said, "There was nothing to be done." More voices joined hers. The miner whose hand Bell had just treated flexed his fingers with obvious amazement. Others spoke of successful treatments that surpassed anything Harrison had achieved. Iron presented additional evidence of the conspiracy: letters detailing plans to discredit Bell, financial records showing Blackwood's support, and correspondence revealing Harrison's true identity. "Dr. Hartwell has been living under false pretenses while accusing others of fraud," Iron announced. Harrison's defense crumbled under the weight of evidence. He had expected to destroy Bell's reputation, but instead had exposed his own deception. Silas Blackwood emerged from the crowd with obvious anger. "This is ridiculous speculation. Dr. Harrison has served our community faithfully." "Your brother-in-law has served his own interests," Iron replied. at the expense of someone far more qualified. The territorial observers conferred among themselves while examining all the documentation. Bell's credentials were legitimate while Harrison's conspiracy was clearly established. Dr. Margaret Phillips, the lead territorial observer, addressed the crowd with authority. Dr. Isabel Freeman's medical license is valid, and her qualifications are exceptional. She has every right to practice medicine in this territory. The announcement sent shockwaves through the gathering. Bell was not just qualified, but officially recognized as superior to Harrison in training and ability. Dr. Hartwell's conduct represents a serious breach of medical ethics, Dr. Phillips continued. His license will be suspended pending a full investigation. Harrison's face contorted with rage and defeat. His elaborate plan had not only failed, but destroyed his own medical career. Furthermore, Dr. Phillips added, Mr. Blackwood's conspiracy to interfere with legitimate medical practice will be reported to territorial authorities. Blackwood began backing away from the scene as the legal implications became clear. His mining operations would face serious scrutiny. Bell stood taller as the truth emerged fully. For the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she could practice medicine under her real name and credentials. The crowd's attitude transformed completely. People who had whispered about her unnatural methods now looked at her with respect and gratitude. Iron felt profound satisfaction watching justice unfold. His months of learning to read had made this victory possible. Dr. Phillips approached Bell personally. The territory needs qualified physicians. Would you consider establishing a permanent practice here? Bell looked around at the faces surrounding her. These people had seen her work and judged her by results rather than prejudice. I would be honored to serve this community as Dr. Isabel Freeman. The formal announcement seemed to lift a weight from Bell's shoulders. She no longer needed to hide her abilities or diminish her qualifications. Iron stepped beside her as the crowd began to disperse. How does it feel to practice under your real name? Liberating, Bell replied. I forgot what it was like to be proud of my education. Harrison and Blackwood slipped away as legal consequences loomed over both men. Their conspiracy had backfired completely. The territorial observers departed with promises to expedite Bell's official recognition as Millfield Creek's primary physician. As afternoon settled over the town square, Bell began planning her legitimate medical practice. The hiding was over, and her real work could finally begin. Iron realized that learning to read had changed both their lives in ways he never could have imagined. 6 months later, the brass nameplate outside Bell's new clinic gleamed in the morning sun. Dr. Isabel Freeman, physician and surgeon, announced her presence to anyone passing down Main Street. The small building that had once housed a failed general store now served as the territory's most advanced medical facility. Bell examined her appointment book as patients filled the waiting area. Word of her skills had spread beyond Millfield Creek, drawing people from settlements 3 days' ride away. Miners, ranchers, and families all sought treatment from the doctor who had proven herself through competence rather than connections. Mrs. Henderson assisted with patient preparation, having become Bell's first trained medical aide. The older woman had insisted on learning proper procedures after witnessing Bell's life-saving work. Dr. Freeman. The Territorial Medical Board sent another letter, Mrs. Henderson announced, holding an official envelope. Bell opened the correspondence and smiled. The board was requesting her input on establishing medical training standards for frontier physicians. Her expertise was being sought at the highest levels. Iron entered the clinic during his afternoon rounds, carrying documents that required Bell's signature. His reading had progressed far beyond basic literacy, and he now handled all official correspondence with confidence. The mining safety inspector wants your recommendations on emergency medical protocols, Iron said, presenting the papers. Bell reviewed the request carefully. Her experience during the mine disaster had established her as an authority on industrial injury treatment. Mining companies throughout the territory now consulted her expertise. I'll prepare a comprehensive response, Bell replied. Proper emergency procedures could prevent many of the injuries we see. Iron nodded approvingly. Their partnership had evolved into something neither had expected when they first met. Mutual respect had grown into genuine friendship, built on shared struggles and victories. The afternoon brought news that Harrison's medical license had been permanently revoked. Dr. Phillips arrived personally to deliver the Territorial Board's final decision. Dr. Hartwell's conspiracy violated every principle of medical ethics, Dr. Phillips explained. He's been barred from practicing medicine anywhere in the United States. Bell felt no satisfaction in Harrison's downfall, only relief that his persecution had finally ended. Justice had been served through proper legal channels rather than personal revenge. Silas Blackwood faced federal charges for conspiracy and mining safety violations. His operations had been shut down pending investigation, and several miners had filed lawsuits over unsafe working conditions. The territorial governor wants to meet with you next month, Dr. Phillips continued. He's considering legislation to establish medical training programs in frontier communities. Bell realized her influence extended far beyond treating individual patients. Her success was opening doors for improved medical care throughout the territory. Evening brought Bell's favorite part of each day. She conducted literacy classes in the clinic's waiting area, teaching reading and basic medical knowledge to anyone interested in learning. Iron assisted with the classes, having become an accomplished reader himself. His transformation from illiterate sheriff to educated lawman inspired others to pursue their own. Education. Knowledge changes everything, Iron often told new students. It gives you power over your own life. Among the regular students was Sarah Chen, a young woman who showed exceptional aptitude for medical concepts. Bell had begun training her in advanced procedures, recognizing potential for another qualified practitioner. The literacy program had expanded beyond medical knowledge to include general education. Bell taught mathematics, science, and practical skills that improved daily life for working families. Education is medicine for ignorance, Bell explained to her students. Both require patience and persistence to achieve lasting results. The town council formally recognized Bell's contributions with a ceremony honoring her service to the community. Mayor Thompson presented her with a key to the city and a resolution praising her medical excellence. Dr. Freeman has proven that competence and character matter more than background or appearance, the mayor declared to the assembled crowd. Bell accepted the honors with genuine humility. Her goal had never been recognition, but simply the opportunity to practice medicine freely. Iron received his own recognition for exposing the conspiracy against Bell. The territorial government commended his investigative work and promoted him to regional sheriff. Your literacy skills made this victory possible, Bell reminded him during the celebration. Your teaching made my literacy possible, Iron replied. We accomplished this together. As autumn arrived in Millfield Creek, Bell reflected on the dramatic changes in her life. She no longer hid her qualifications or diminished her abilities for others' comfort. Her patient roster included people from every level of society. Wealthy mine owners sought her expertise alongside poor laborers. Her skill had transcended social barriers that once seemed insurmountable. The medical clinic had become a symbol of progress for the entire territory. Visitors often commented on the advanced care available in what had seemed like a backwater mining town. Bell's influence extended beyond medicine into social change. Her success challenged assumptions about who could hold positions of authority and expertise. Young women throughout the territory began pursuing education with renewed determination. Bell's example proved that barriers could be overcome through persistence and competence. Iron's literacy program for adults had grown into a permanent institution. The territorial government provided funding for books and supplies after seeing the positive results. Ignorance breeds fear and hatred, Iron often said. Education creates understanding and respect. Bell stood on her clinic's front porch as sunset painted the mountains gold and crimson. 6 months ago, she had lived in hiding, pretending to be less than she was. Now she practiced openly as Dr. Isabel Freeman, respected member of the community and recognized expert in frontier medicine. The journey from concealment to acceptance had required courage, allies, and the willingness to risk everything for truth. But the outcome had exceeded her wildest hopes. Millfield Creek had become the place where Dr. Isabel Freeman could finally be herself completely, using all her skills and knowledge to serve others without apology or pretense.